story begins in a world where dragons and humans once protected each other. On the land of Kamandra, dragons descended from the sky and brought people water, food, good fortune, and even shielded them from disasters when danger struck. But one catastrophe shattered that peace. A threat known as the Droon. It had no body, no mind, nothing but a living cloud of dark mist that turned anyone it touched into a cold stone statue. Just when everything was on the verge of disappearing, 5 dragons stood at the final river's end. They didn't hesitate. They poured all their power, their breath, and their very lives into a glowing dragon gem. With a flash of light, the Droon were pushed back, and humanity was saved. But the price? For dragons instantly turned to stone, and the last dragon, Sisu, vanished. The dragon gem was left behind, becoming the world's final safeguard. The task of protecting it fell to the Heart Tribe. But as time passed, people's hearts changed. The gem was priceless, and of course the other tribes wanted it too. The land eventually split into 5 factions: Heart, Fong, Talon, Spine, and Tail. People who once fought side by side now eyed each other with suspicion, as if a war could break out at any moment. And our protagonist, Raya, is the daughter of the Heart Tribe's chief, the next guardian of the Dragon Gem. She had no idea that her fate, her father's fate, and the fate of the entire world would all change on that very day. The morning fog still hung between the trees as Raya rode her companion Tuk Tuk toward the tribe's sacred temple. Tuk Tuk, round and sturdy, had been her beloved partner since childhood. Today, an important ceremony was being held in the temple. Raya was about to become an official guardian of the Dragon Gem. When the temple doors opened, light from above shone onto the gem, filling the hall with a bright blue glow like a shimmering lake. Raya's father stood beside the gem, wearing the kind of complicated expression only a father has: pride, worry, and deep emotion. Guarding the gem isn't for our own sake, he said slowly. It's for everyone, for this whole world. Raya nodded. She'd grown up hearing these stories and understood that this wasn't glory, it was responsibility. Just then, representatives of the other tribes began to arrive. They pretended to be visiting peacefully, but their eyes betrayed them. Every single one was locked onto the gem with barely concealed desire. The one who caught Raya's attention most was Namari, the princess of the Fong tribe. She was Raya's age, sharp-eyed, confident, and impossible to ignore. Namari gifted Raya a pendant shaped like Sisu. Raya loved it instantly. The two girls met for the first time but became friends almost right away. They talked, sparred, trusted each other, and even shared a shocking secret. Namari quietly told Raya Sisu wasn't gone. She was still sleeping at the end of an ancient river. Then she pulled out a map. She claimed she could take Raya to find the dragon. If the world could have a dragon again, everything might be saved. Raya believed her without hesitation. To show her trust, Raya even led Namari into the hidden chamber where the gem was kept, a place only guardians were allowed to enter. But just when Raya thought she had found a lifelong friend, boom, Namari kicked her to the ground. Raya stared at her in disbelief. Namari, why? Namari forced down her emotions and left only one cold sentence. I'm sorry, Fong needs the gem. Then Fong warriors stormed into the temple. Other tribes rushed in after hearing the commotion. Everyone shouted for peace while fighting to seize the gem. Accusations flew, distrust spread, and chaos erupted. The gem fell to the ground and shattered into 5 pieces. Blue light burst out. The earth shook. The same force that nearly destroyed the world 500 years ago. The Droon had returned. Shadows of darkness crawled up from the ground, seeped out of the air, and oozed from the walls. Anyone touched by them instantly turned into stone. In a storm of screams, everyone frantically fought over the gem fragments, desperate to live a few seconds longer. Raya tried to run toward her father, but he pushed her into the river first. Go! Take the fragment with you! That shout was both a command and his final goodbye. The dark mist wrapped around his legs and climbed upward, his body hardening little by little. The last thing Raya saw was her father's eyes, not filled with fear, not regret, but hope. The river swept Raya away as the world around her shattered. The nightmare from 500 years ago had begun again. 6 years passed. The world became a broken place. Tribes divided by resentment, and the Droon lurking in every corner. People no longer trusted one another, and words like peace felt like an old legend. Raya, once a bright and cheerful girl, had become a lone warrior, weapons on her back, fragments at her waist, and riding Tuk Tuk. Now grown into a massive rolling mount, she wandered across barren lands. She had only one goal: to find Sisu, revive the dragons, and seal the Droon once more. This journey took her 6 long years. During those years, she crossed endless dried riverbeds, abandoned villages, and countless stone figures left behind by the Droon. She no longer dared trust anyone. The wound from that betrayal still lived inside her. Finally, she reached the last river shown on the map. She placed every bit of hope she had into one final prayer. Kneeling by the water, she gently set a fragment into the river. "Please, Sisu, if you're really still out there." Before she finished, the water began to stir. It flowed upward against gravity, forming floating droplets. More and more gathered, brighter and brighter, until they became a huge sphere of water. Boom! The sphere burst open. A blue, furry dragon with a round face and a soft tail fell right in front of Raya. Sisu had returned, but she was nothing like the majestic legend Raya imagined. She was more like an overly chatty, just woke up plush toy, floating around, shape-shifting, enthusiastic, but slightly clumsy. Raya was stunned. The mythical dragon she had searched for over 6 years turned out to have a surprisingly human personality. Sisu picked up the gem fragment, and a blue glow ran across her body. "This is Amba's magic. Her power is inside this piece," she told Raya. If they could gather all 5 fragments, the dragon gem would regain its full strength, and Sisu could use the combined magic of her 5 dragon siblings. If they could rebuild the gem, the world could be saved. And so, their journey officially began. This part of the journey would become the most emotional, gentle, and heartbreaking section of the entire story. The Tail tribe, close to the Great River, was once the wealthiest and cleverest of all the tribes. But when Raya arrived, the whole place had already fallen. Not a single living person remained. Even the tribe's lifelong greedy chief had turned to stone, still clutching the fragment tightly in her arms. This moment showed Raya something even scarier than the Droon. Sometimes human desire is harder to fight than any disaster. Sisu obtained the second fragment, and this time she gained the ability to turn into a human. She transformed into a purple-haired girl in blue clothes, slightly clumsy but incredibly charming. The two continued their journey. The city of the Talon tribe was like a giant marketplace, crowded, loud, and chaotic. There, Raya met a pitiful-looking little girl. But the next second, the girl and a trio of mischievous little critters stole her wallet and the gem fragment in a flash. They were unbelievably fast, one moment at Raya's feet, the next already bouncing across the rooftops. Raya was completely stunned, but the girl's way of surviving made her heart ache. Her entire family had been taken by the Droon. Eventually, the girl joined Raya's team, and for the first time, Raya realized she was slowly beginning to trust people again. The canyon of the Spine tribe was cold, as if the world had forgotten it. The houses were collapsed, the ground cracked, and the wind echoed through the emptiness. Raya and Sisu met a lone survivor, Tong. He was like a wary wolf, every sentence edged with suspicion. But when he saw Sisu, he suddenly fell silent. He too had lost his whole tribe, guarding the ruins alone for years. He handed the fragment to Raya, handing hope for life to her, while choosing to remain in that hollow place himself. In that moment, Raya understood. Behind every fragment lay a tribe's story, a tribe's sacrifice. There was a kind of pain Raya hadn't dared face in 6 years. She still resented Namari, and she still hated that betrayal. But fate always knows how to drag you back to your wounds. They crossed paths again in Fong territory. Namari was colder than before, her eyes sharper, and the weight she carried heavier than anyone else's. If Fong's protective waterways dried up, her people would be the first to fall. Namari urged Raya to hand over the fragments so her tribe could gain the power to survive. Raya, of course, refused to trust her. Just as their fight was about to explode, Sisu stepped between them. The gentle, innocent dragon looked at the fury in both girls' eyes and said softly, "Maybe neither of you ever truly gave the other a real chance." The words stung Namari, but they also struck the part of her heart she never dared acknowledge, because she herself no longer trusted anyone. Raya reacted on instinct. She drew her sword, but in the split second she blocked the shot. The arrow flew toward Sisu instead. Sisu fell into the ravine. The world went silent for 3 whole seconds. In Raya's mind, only one thought remained. I killed the last dragon. At the same time, the water barrier collapsed, and Fong's final defense fell apart. The Droon surged in from every direction. Namari's mother was turned to stone. The city became a nightmare in an instant. Raya broke. She chased after Namari, eyes burning with fury. "You're the one who got Sisu hurt." Namari's eyes were also red. "You're the one who drew the blade." All their pain, anger, and regret exploded in that storm of a fight. This wasn't a battle between tribes. It was 2 girls bleeding from wounds they never healed. But when they saw the frightened families running for their lives, heard people crying out, and watched the world crumble around them, they finally stopped. The world didn't need more hatred. The world needed someone to take responsibility. All 5 fragments were together. Only one step remained. But who would put them together? Once someone assembled the gem, they'd have to hand it over, and the moment they did, they'd be taken by the Droon. No one wanted to. No one dared to. In the heavy silence, Raya stepped forward first. She placed her fragment in Namari's hands. "I choose to trust you," she said. The next second, Raya was taken by the Droon, turning into stone. Namari stood alone, trembling, holding the fragments everyone had entrusted to her. She wanted to run, to survive, but when she looked back at those who once doubted her, who now sacrificed themselves for her, she finally understood. Trust doesn't exist because the world is safe. Trust exists so the world can become safe. She put the pieces together. Light burst through the darkness. The Droon were defeated, not because of the gem's magic, but because, for the first time, humans truly trusted one another. Stone figures cracked open, and people returned to life. Rain, long lost, fell from the sky. The parched land soaked in water once again. Then light rippled through the clouds, and 5 dragons descended. Leading them was Sisu. She smiled at Raya with the same gentle look from before. "You finally learned the most important magic of our kind, trust." The people of all 5 tribes walked out from the shadows of petrification. Hands that once held hatred now slowly reached toward each other. Raya saw her father return to life, and ran into his arms. In that moment, she truly grew up, and Kamandra became whole again. This isn't just a story about dragons or an adventure. It's a story that reminds us the world doesn't fall apart because of monsters, but because of distrust. Humans have the power to create light, and the ability to destroy one another. The Dragon Gem's magic wasn't the real strength. The real force that changed the world was the courage to hand trust to someone else. When the 5 tribes chose to give their fragments to one another, to face their fear, the world was saved. Raya proved with her actions. Trust isn't naive, it's bravery. This story is about dragons, about people, and about every person who keeps believing in the future, even after they've been disappointed.